Setting up your meeting. Okay. And I'm just making sure that we're live in the group. And we are, I think. Awesome. Live on Facebook. Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Your Relationship Workbench series of shares by me and certain selected guests and friends of mine. That this pandemic is bringing in particular to our relationships, families that are spending a lot more time together than a lot of families are used to spending, and couples. And last episode, Friday, my friend Tracy Lutz was on sharing parenting tips that were great if you're home with your kids more than you're used to being. And today, I wanted to be able to have someone come on and share about spiritual and emotional well-being in times of crisis, this one in particular. And a really delightful friend of mine, Lisa Witter-Engels, is with us here. And I'm going to shift our view. There we go. So Lisa is here from the tropical Northern California area. Tropical compared to here in Colorado, where we're all freezing our asses off. And Lisa has been a coach for over 20 years, and also in that capacity has worked with a variety of people working on areas like health, relationship, entrepreneurship, because she, like me, has been an entrepreneur for a long, long time. And I really knew, given some of the other things that Lisa is up to, I knew that she'd be the perfect choice to come on and share, how can we really, particularly in my mind, how do we manage our mind, which, if any of yours are like mine, can go all over the place and be concerned about, money, health, people getting sick and dying. If you're lucky enough that you're home and you're working, then even then, we still need support right now. So Lisa, welcome. I'm delighted to have you here.
Yeah, thanks, Geoff. It's wonderful to be here with you. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks for starting this group. It's definitely needed as people, as you said, are home and in close proximity to people that they aren't usually in proximity to. Just a funny short aside on that note. I was watching Late Night with Jimmy Fallon last night. It was a rerun, whatever, on Xfinity On Demand. And he was talking to one of his band members, one of the people that plays the music for the show. Mm-hmm. And he was like he was making his IRK list. And Jimmy Fallon's like, IRK list? What's an IRK list? He's like, well, like all those things that irk me. Like now that I'm home, I'm never home like this. I have to deal with my kids. I have to deal with my wife. And he's like, my daughter's text messaging me and telling me I have a bug in my room. Can you come get it, Dad? And he's like, it was a ladybug. It was a hilarious skit of, I don't think it was a skit, actually. It was like real life. He was like, it's my IRK list. I'm stuck at home and I never have to deal with this stuff. So that's why we're here with you, Geoff.
Yes, we are here to counter program IRKs.
Exactly.
And I just want to say, before you dive in with what you'd like to share, if you're connected with us on Zoom, then feel free, if you have questions for Lisa or me or both, click on the chat button at the bottom of your Zoom window. And if you're watching live in the Facebook group, the Your Relationship Workbench Facebook group, then please feel free to ask questions by comments. Put them in the comments box. I'm checking both. So if you see my eyes doing this, it's not that I'm not paying attention to you, it's that I'm just monitoring people coming in. Okay.
Awesome.
So the anti-irk.
The anti-irk, yeah. So anyhow, I think, Geoff, during these times, it's a time of social distancing, but it should not be a time of spiritual distancing. This is actually a time to move more deeply into our spiritual practice, into examining the true nature of who we really are and the true nature of reality, which is sort of like a Buddhist approach to and thinking around things. And I mean, I can dive into a thought that I had on that and sort of a practice. Okay. Well, to me, it's very interesting that we now have this time to sit with our families and our loved ones, our spouses at home, because relationships, especially family, our birth relations and our spouses or those deeper romantic relationships are all karmic, right? So relationships really show us who we are. I mean, we know just typical Western psychology. Most of the people here, I'm sure, understand that your relationship is a reflection of some aspect of you. So, but when we're looking at this more from a karmic aspect, we can take it a little bit deeper and begin to question and examine ourselves in this process. And so when I say at the beginning, it's time, we need to less spiritual distancing. It's time to move a little bit closer to using this time to take more time to examine who we are and who we are in relationship to others, which we have a really good opportunity to do right now as we're in such close proximity, because any disruption that we're feeling in our relationship to others is really just showing us that we have some disruption in our relationship to the true nature of ourselves, and also a disruption, therefore, to the true nature of the divine. So it's really a cool opportunity to look a little bit closer. And I think, I don't know if this is true or not for our people here who might be here or watching in replay, but I know for sure in relationship that two things that come up that really trigger us are these things of judgment and denial, like judging others and also denying aspects of ourselves or others. And those are always telltale signs of karmic patterns. I think that's one of the really cool thing about relationships is they show us our karmic patterns, and our karmic patterns bring us suffering, not pain, but suffering. And so it's an opportunity to look at, what is causing me this suffering? It's an opportunity to begin to examine deeper the parts of ourselves and how we are relating to ourselves through how we are relating to others. I don't know if does that make sense?
It makes total sense. I mean, what you're reminding me of that I've seen over and over and over and over again is that, I don't know that I would have thought of it a long time ago as karmic. I do now. But we pick the people that are, we don't consciously pick it, but we pick people that are going to bring out our best and they're going to bring out our worst. And what I love about you bringing this particular perspective right now is that it's very much in sync with what had me want to start this group and these series of live chats, but also the main context that I presented in the first episode last Monday, that this thing it is created and put us all in, I call it the greatest petri dish that you could ask to be in, which is to really look at all of the falsehood that is in our relationships, that is in our self-relationship. And that's exactly what you're saying. Looking at where am I starting to get down to my last nerve with my spouse or one of my kids or all my kids. That's all an opportunity to take the veils of BS off that all of us have to one degree or another.
Absolutely. When you say it's a petri dish, it reminds me of one of my teachers. She always says that relationships are a cauldron of consciousness. And I think it's really true. Like, it is a petri dish because it's a cauldron of consciousness. It's like it's allowing us, as you're saying, to pierce the veil or to pull back the veil and begin to examine who we truly are. In Eastern spiritual tradition, particularly Buddhism, they say that all suffering, or Buddha said that suffering is caused by an unexamined life. And so now, if we're using we're in a lab together, this is where you do the examining, right? This is where you start to examine what the truth really is. And in terms of what people may or may not be experiencing right now, if we sort of stay along, because there are two easy ones to look at, which is judgment and denial. I'm in close proximity to someone that I love all the time now. And, you might be feeling a little irked. You might have your own irk list going. And it's an interesting thing to look at and examine as a practice, as a spiritual practice. These two things, judgment and denial, reveal karmic patterns to us. And they are both judgment and denial are forms of aversion, where denial is an aversion where we are actually suppressing. So it's an internal aversion. It's a suppressing. I'm not like him or her. That thing about him or her totally bugs me. I'm nothing like that. And judgment is an external form of aversion. It's an expression of that type of aversion. So I'm outwardly expressing something that I don't like in order to get away from that person, when in reality, it's like, well, what are you trying to get away from within yourself? And in sort of in the vein of Buddhist inquiry, this is that perfect opportunity to use inquiry. And I can give just a couple of things that you could easily do in your own meditation, or if you have time, I would recommend early in the morning, get up a half hour early and do some journaling. If you're not a meditator, you could use this type of inquiry either in journaling or meditation, or both. And it would be simply to ask, first of all, where am I judging or where am I denying in relation to X person, whoever that person is, my husband, my child, my mother-in-law, whoever it is, right? And then to continue that line of inquiry and asking yourself, do I feel judged by that person? So I'm judging them. So look at who I'm judging, and then asking, do I feel judged by that person? Look into that, and then following that up with, how do I defend against this type of judgment? So I feel judged by them. So how am I defending myself against this type of judgment?
Mhm.
And then looking, as we begin to examine even deeper, we can begin to ask, well, how am I applying that similar type of defense in other areas of my life as well? So this one relationship begins to be a mirror for the true nature of who we are, or it's not the true nature of who we are, it's our false self and how we're acting and reacting in the world. And then taking it and flipping it to, do I judge this person, right? Or am I in judgment of this person, and what am I trying to protect in judging them? What about myself am I trying to protect in judging them? And then as we go through that line of inquiry, you sort of take that out into the rest of your life as well. Do I judge others in an effort as well to protect myself in this same way? So am I using this same defense mechanism in other relationships as well? And then you can go through this same exact type of inquiry for denial as well. You just sort of go through those same type of questions, but if you really sit with them, it's quite powerful and begins to reveal something about the nature of how you're relating to that person. Then the cool thing about it is, Geoff, because you do all this work, is you're then taking responsibility for yourself and how you're showing up in the world. And then that puts you into a place of power where you can make new choices and choose something different. In Buddhism, we're trying to get away from aversion and attachment and sort of get to this place of equanimity. Well, this is a good opportunity to practice it, and honestly super hard. It's not, it's way easier said than done. All of this stuff that I'm saying, it's way easier said than done. But it's worth trying to get the ball going on your own a little bit, right?
Well, it is. And I think there are a couple thoughts that came to me as you were sharing. One being that you use the word responsibility. And one of my spiritual teachers defines responsibility as response able.
Right.
So you're able to respond to something as opposed to reacting, because that's one of the ways to know somewhere there's, denial and or judgment going on when somebody says, dinner was awesome and it would have been great if we could have had ice cream after, and you rip their head off.
Right.
That's a reaction. So I just wanted to offer everybody that slight twist on responsibility. And then the other thing is that if any of you take on this practice that Lisa is giving, which is so valuable. I mean, I've been doing this for years. That what you just gave is so useful. And I want to just add one thing to it that isn't inherently spiritual, but it allows more room for spiritual equanimity to come in. And that is when you're writing down what you might be judging about them, or you're writing down how you feel judged by that other person. The other thing you could look at is, what have I not been telling my partner for anywhere from days to years? Because if you look at what's pissing you off about your partner, like Lisa's saying, it's totally about you. And odds are that the irritability is coming up not just because now you're home all the time, but also it's bringing up unfinished business that you have with each other. So a term that I've used, I didn't coin it, but withholds. What have you been withholding from your partner?
Mm-hmm.
And you can take that into a whole nother layer of what you were giving them, Lisa. Okay, now what have I been withholding? And where's blame and judgment? And where's denial? And what am I going to take back as my responsibility, my stuff, that then you could go to your partner and be able to not go, hey, I figured out why I thought you were such an a-hole all these years. That would not be recommended. But to be able to go, I had this amazing insight that came to me when I got really irritated with you yesterday. And to be able to lay out to your partner what you're seeing and what you're owning.
Yeah.
That you own your piece, which if you're with the right person for you that also has a similar level of openness, willing to be vulnerable, can take that and appreciate you for doing your work. And then maybe that helps incentivize them to do the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's a wonderful idea, and I love how you are inviting everybody to bring it forward in this particular way as your own insight, because it is received a lot. It will be received a lot differently than if you might do it in a different way.
Right.
But yeah, absolutely. So the thing is that that all relationships are karmic, from a Eastern spiritual perspective, if you want to look at it like that. And it is sort of interesting to look at it like that, because once you sort of start to clear these karmic patterns, your suffering begins to diminish. You don't have suffering. And right now, I think that a lot of what everybody is experiencing is suffering. We're experiencing an immense amount of suffering. And the beautiful thing about it is that Buddhism gives us pretty much an exact science of how to end suffering. We can't end pain. I've used this example a couple times in the past week, because I was running with my dog the other day, and I fell on both my hands and knees. I got totally huge, both knees, both hands, elbow. That was painful. Can't really stop the pain.
Right.
That's inevitable. We're going to feel pain, but suffering is, we can solve that through the way we respond, as you were saying, like choosing a different way of responding to the situation, circumstance, event that we're in. And in the end, we sort of the litmus test, as you know, Geoff, of have I worked through this karmic pattern? Well, if it doesn't trigger you anymore.
Right.
If when your husband says that the dinner was great and you could have bought some ice cream too, if that is just like something that makes you laugh and you're not triggered anymore, then you've worked through
Worked
that.
it out.
You worked it out. Yeah.
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 So, Lisa, I'm wondering if in the few minutes we have left, do you have a practice that you could offer that helps two people, or for people that are living alone? What's a way when suffering might be happening just without even another person being involved? But what's a way that you've found helps get people out of this and drop back down into here and into being grounded?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think for me personally, and one thing I like to teach my clients and people I work with, and you may have already shared this, I don't know, like in the week that you've been doing this, but I'm sure you do this with your clients too, but it is just a very simple practice of compassion and remembering, just taking a moment, closing your eyes. In this process that we're talking about, we have to have radical compassion for ourselves and the choices that we've made, as well as radical compassion for others. And just remembering that we're all any of us want is happiness. We all want it. We're striving for it in our sideways ways sometimes. And remembering that everybody's deepest intention is to find happiness and to have compassion and understanding that we're all in a place of suffering because we're trying to find happiness in ways that are actually tactics that aren't working. And it's, for me, just a remembering. It's like I can go in, I mean, I can say breathing. I definitely do like heart-centered breathing. But even just in the moment, just reminding myself, wait a minute, all I want is happiness. All he or she wants is happiness. I'm suffering. He's suffering or she's suffering because we're trying to get it in this weird way. And for somehow for me, that what do you call it? Recognition of that, or just calling it out, sort of puts me in a different place. It lets me have a different perspective of myself and of that person in the moment, and puts me into a place where I feel like I have more control and can make choices that are going to take me away from suffering and not pull me deeper into suffering. That helps.
Yes, and I love that you just used the word choice, because I'm totally aware that when my mind, my ego goes bananas, I remember how frequently it felt like I got hijacked and I was without power. And the reality is that everybody has the power to change what you're thinking and feeling pretty quickly. And what Lisa just offered up is one way to do it, and particularly starting with self-compassion. And you make me realize, as I'm sure you're finding with your friends and family and loved ones that you're connecting with in these weird times, we are all in uncharted territory. There isn't a single one of us that has ever lived through this kind of thing in our lifetime. And the mind loves knowing, controlling, and thinking that you can control everything. And we're all out of control. And that's both the source of where suffering can happen, but it's also can be a source of an incredible liberation. So I really, that was perfect to bring in at the end. And I love the first practice you offered. And this is really just the tip of the iceberg, because you also have a group going in Facebook that I'd love for you to take a minute and share with everybody about that group and what you're doing in there and how they find it. And then we'll wrap up.
Sure. Thanks. Yeah, so I have a group called Spiritual Practice for Turbulent Times. And specifically, it's about, I mean, it's exactly what it says, is it's about spiritual practice for times like these, times of uncertainty. I know that most of us already, before any of this even happened, we had a lot of things going on in our lives, and we were juggling a lot of responsibilities, personal and professional responsibilities. Then you plop on top of it this whole pandemic, and things can feel completely out of control. And it's my belief that it's that spiritual practice is what we need now more than ever to keep us centered, grounded, feeling like we're in control, even though we know that's just an illusion. But
Right.
having regular practice is critical. And so in the group, I do 2 to 3 live practice sessions per week where we meet, and I do a short teaching. For instance, if I was going to use today as a model, I would do a short teaching on karma and relationships, and then we would do a meditation or some type of practice that takes you deeper into having an experiential understanding of the concept that we talked about. So it's a very Buddhist approach. I would just say in general, it's inspired by Eastern spiritual traditions.
Yeah.
So yeah, please come join, just check it out. Spiritual Practice for Turbulent Times Facebook group. So yeah, thanks, Jeff.
And Lisa, tell everybody what time, what days and times do you do those?
Yep. Every week on Tuesdays and Thursdays for sure, sometimes weekends as well. And then I always have an invite out so you know what time, but generally speaking, Tuesdays 9 a.m., Thursdays 4 p.m. Pacific time.
Great. Awesome. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much for your generosity, both of heart, time, and wisdom. And everybody, please, if you're watching this on replay, if you have questions that arise that you want to ask either me or Lisa, then put them in the comments group, in the comments box in the group. And Lisa's in the group, I'm in the group. I'll make sure that questions are getting to her. And then we'll be back on Wednesday, noon Mountain Time, and I will be talking about how do you make an upside out of the downside. So come back for that. Lisa, many blessings to you. I just wish nothing but continued health and safety and connection. And thanks for bringing everything you brought today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Jeff. Stay safe and well.
I'm working on it and warm.
Exactly.
All right, everybody. Have a good rest of your day. See you in a couple of days.
Bye.
Bye.